welcome to another installment of the What's the Play series here on our YouTube channel. I am Ethan, also known as LordTupperware. Here we've got a black-white deck in Theros Beyond Death. Nothing super exciting here, except for this Erebos hanging out. A lot of removal. We've got a Drag to the Underworld, couple Dreadful Apathies, fairly good curve, bunch of Sacrifice outlets in Erebos, Soul Reaper of Mogus, and Lampad of Death's Vigil, some ways to make tokens, couple Hierophants. Unfortunately, our escape cards are only Sentinel's Eyes and Mogus's Favor. Would have loved an Omen of the Dead to recur this Grey Merchant, but what can you do? Here we are in game number 1. Unfortunately, we've stumbled for a couple of turns here on lands, dropping a Temple Thief on 2 and a Discordant Piper on 3, and with no third land drop in sight, we fire off this Agonizing Remorse on turn number 4 and see the following cards in our opponent's hand. 2 planes, Heliod's Intervention, Rumbling Sentry, and Thaumaturge's Familiar. Now, I found this to be a pretty interesting situation because I think all 3 of these cards are sort of defensible picks when you think about it. So you can imagine that our opponent is going to cast Thaumaturge's Familiar next turn and Rumbling Sentry the following turn if those are not the cards that we take. Now, Familiar, not a card that we have a problem dealing with really. Like, I'm not that worried about taking 1 damage in the air over a few turns. Rumbling Sentry, however, is a card that I feel like I'm fairly nervous about. You know, I can definitely see a world where if we rip 3 lands off the top, Grey Merchant blanks it, right? Grey Merchant having 4 toughness to get in front of Rumbling Sentry's 3 power is definitely possible. Certainly a Hero of the Pride blowout is possible there with a target on that to give it +1/+0. So that's something to think about, but that card feels like a threat that's going to be difficult to deal with. Now, the other thing to think about is that Heliod's Intervention is quite strong against our deck, right? I mean, it doesn't deal with much in our hand other than the Soul Reaper at the moment, right? Because this is indestructible. But if we take a look back at our deck, a lot of our good draws or a lot of the ways that we can stabilize against this this sort of lack of lands that we're hitting against our opponent curving out is to, you know, draw land into a Dreadful Apathy to take care of a threat. But if that's a way that we're hoping to stabilize, that's not going to really work if our opponent is left with Heliod's Intervention in hand. So thinking about, well, a 1-power attacker in the air isn't that scary. A Rumbling Sentry essentially could get blanked either by Grey Merchant, or we can just kill it with our Drag to the Underworld if we hit another swamp. The real problem, I think, if the game goes long, which it's going to have to if we're going to get back in this, is to take the Heliod's Intervention, which is not very exciting against our current hand, but in any world that the game progresses and we can win, I believe leaving this in our opponent's hand is going to be the most detrimental. So that is what I ended up nabbing out of their hand.